Hey folks, welcome back. Time for some more Halloween horror RPG stuff. This time we've got The Fall of Delta Green by Kenneth Hite and Pelgrane Press, as you can see down here in the corner. And note the logo for the new version of the Delta Green RPG up here in the left, and that's because this is actually a partnership between the what's actually called the Delta Green Partnership and Pelgrane Press to bring over the Delta Green system and background over to the GUMSHOE system. But what they've done with it that's unique is they've placed it in a different part of the timeline. So the Delta Green RPG itself, which you'll see perhaps later on in this Halloween bonanza, is set in the modern day, basically. There's also a 90s supplement called The Conspiracy that we'll look at in the future as well. This version here, The Fall of Delta Green, is about Delta Green in the 1960s. And soon to follow, hopefully, there is a very huge campaign coming out, which is by Graham Ryder Hanrahan, who has got an amazing pedigree of past adventure writing, including The Pirates of Drinax for Traveller, which is incredible. So I have that one on pre-order for whenever it does come out. I think it's in layout at the moment. It's over 400 pages, so it's quite massive. So there's a great long-form campaign coming out for this as well. And it's a really unique setting, 1960s, the peak of the counterculture, and we've got, obviously, you can see the giant tentacle ripping through a helicopter, so there is Cthulhu mythos action going on here as well. And for those who don't know, Delta Green is a government organization that is tasked with tracking down what they call the Unnatural, which is all the manifestations of horrors from beyond the edge of time and space, all the Cthulhu mythos related stuff, alien activity, that sort of thing. And their mission is to find it, eradicate it, destroy it, and hide all the evidence from the public. So they don't use the Unnatural, they just don't risk contamination or any of their members or agents being converted to cultists or anything terrible like that. They find this with the Unnatural and they're supposed to simply destroy it and cover up the evidence. And Delta Green got its start back in 1928 with the raid on Innsmouth against the Deep Ones, and then carried on through this time period up until the end of this, where this book is set, The Fall of Delta Green, where they fell out of favor with the government for a while. And then they operated basically as a terrorist organization, kind of a super underground shadow organization organized into individual semi-independent cells, coordinated by one cell that was called A Cell, sort of their central HQ. They scratched up funding and agents wherever they could and kept the cause going until finally in the post-9/11 era, government funding returned. Delta Green was made a legit organization again, although once again buried deep within the black budgets, and so they once again had the full funding and support of the US government behind them. So there's quite a tangled history of Delta Green, and this book is bringing a particularly important period of that history into the light, and doing so through a conversion into GUMSHOE, which is quite interesting. If you'll forgive me all my babbling here, just staring at the cover, sorry about that. You can see it's quite a nice cover. We got that Vietnam vibe. We can see clearly a jungle climate, helicopters in action, a infantryman here with his machine gun, and a giant tentacle spearing its way through that unfortunate helicopter and its occupants, with a few more flying alongside it. And to the rear, we have that very characteristic Delta Green style, for those of you familiar with that RPG, where we've got the back page here is sort of a patchwork of bits of documents and relevant photographs and stuff that are all given a kind of creepy edge. So, burn after reading. 40 years ago in 1928, the U.S. government destroyed the small town of Innsmouth, Massachusetts. The Innsmouth raid uncovered the Cthulhu cult, an unnatural threat to reality itself. Worse things lie hidden: Nazi sorcerers, Migo brain harvesters, corpse-eating ghouls, nightmare dimensions, and a headless god offering apocalyptic rituals. Worst of all, under the Majestic program, the federal government blindly strives to weaponize these toxic alien secrets. You are an agent of Delta Green, a top-secret classified black program, authorized but unacknowledged by the United States National Security Establishment. Your mission: search out and destroy the Unnatural at home and abroad, at all costs, at any cost. The apocalypse is now. Murder cults rise in the Middle East and in California. Riots against reality paralyze Paris. Russian spies undermine governments. American forces fight secret wars around the world and pour fire and poison onto the jungles and villages of Vietnam. Space probes touch down on other worlds and people feel the light of invisible suns. In 1968, that's just the headlines. In the shadows, still fouler forces lurk. A sociopathic conspiracy offers the earth to Nyarlathotep. The mafia obeys inhuman commands. A yellow sign gleams in Cuba and in San Francisco. Invisible torturers flow out of China. The world is going mad. The stars are coming right. The 60s begin in sunny optimism and end in nighted disaster in the jungles of Indochina. After the summer of the 1950s, now comes the fall. ... So, The Fall of Delta Green adapts the award-winning Delta Green, the role-playing game, to the award-winning GUMSHOE system. Although it's interoperable with Trail of Cthulhu and Night's Black Agents, this core book is all you need to play deadly one-shot adventures or a campaign spanning the years from hope to madness. So, there you go. That's the background to the book. quite a lot to get through, but don't be intimidated by the history of the program. In fact, I think one of the great things about Delta Green is that you can start your agents as kind of regular federal worker schmoes in various different departments. They get called together for some unknown reason. They are put up against the unnatural. If they survive and keep their mouths shut and do as they're told, then they might be recruited, and gradually they'll learn more about the organization they're in. But each individual agent actually knows very little about any other agent or about the organization itself. That's one of their means of containing any agents that might have been contaminated by the unnatural, you see. So there is a lot of background to dig into as a GM to come up with cool ideas and scenarios and stuff like that. It's really fun to read as a player as well, but during play, you don't need to know that beforehand. All you need to know is what Delta Green is for, vaguely, and you can kind of jump right in. So that's one of the nice things about the way the game is set up. It's best to start with your agents, in my opinion, as coming from the NSA, the CIA, the whatever. They get recruited onto a very strange sort of black site or strange operation, which leads them to an encounter with the unnatural. And if they account for themselves well, they take out the threat and they cover up as they're supposed to, then they get inducted into the ultra-shadowy halls of Delta Green. So, enough of that. We'll take a look first at the end sheets here. You can see eyes only with the characteristic green triangle that is a Delta Green symbol, and it's showing key locations in the Delta Green setting at this time. So, of course, we still have the Soviet Union at this time, and there's a little legend here with friendly assets, the U.S. fleet, U.S. air bases, space ground stations, and then we have unnatural ones. We have deep ones, we have outposts for Hastur, Kuen Yuin, Migo, Nyarlathotep, unclassified unnatural threats, UFO activity, and it gives some flight paths as well for those UFO activity. And we can see these are Hastur symbols, for example. So you can really go on quite a globe-trotting adventure with this if you want to. And they give you all the tools you need to do that. And you'll see it's a very nice high production value volume as well. So as is typical with any Pelgrane Press production, there's a lot of content in these pages, and it is a big book as well. So I'm going to try and go through it without getting too bogged down in the specifics. We will look at Delta Green and the RPG later on, so we'll get more into the background during that video. But they do give what I think in the beginning of this book is a really excellent one-page introduction to what GUMSHOE is that I hope they'll put in all future GUMSHOE books from now on. So in the contents-wise, we have an initial briefing. What is Delta Green? What is the fall of Delta Green? What is GUMSHOE? How to use dice? Then there's a character generation summary. Then we talk about the investigative abilities, general abilities, military background, different possible government departments, including the CIA, the OSS, DOD, FBI, all this kind of stuff. Other possible backgrounds, including activists, archaeologists, physicians, pilots, whatever. Then you have your bonds, which is another feature brought over from Delta Green, which is a fantastic part of that RPG. Then we have motivations in play and how they work. And finally, your personality details. And then they go into detail for all the abilities, what they can do in-game, mechanically speaking, and then the general abilities, of course, as well. And then the general rules, so clues, spends, and tests, which we'll be familiar with from other GUMSHOE games. Contests, which is contested rolls against another creature or another player. The workings of combat, which are a little bit more sophisticated, again, than Trail of Cthulhu. More along the lines of Night's Black Agents, where you have more options and a wider array of weapons that you can use. And they can do things like laying down cover fire or sniping, stuff like that. There's also different hazards, napalm, all this kind of stuff. And then we get into stability, sanity, mental disorders, acute episodes, refreshing abilities and recovering your character, what happened after the mission. So once you get back to the world, one of the unique aspects of Delta Green is that it affects your life, your bonds to people that you care about. You have to keep all this horrible stuff to yourself, and it wears on you. It tears you down from the inside out and can eventually rip your character apart. And the game represents that in a kind of explicit way, which I think is very, very cool. Then we got tools of the trade, so equipment, booby traps, stealth, surveillance, vehicles, tradecraft, which, like Nice Black Agents, is kind of cover, a running asset, stuff like that. Some good advice for players. Then we have more detail on the background, including Delta Green itself. Majestic, which is the program mentioned on the back that trying to weaponize the unnatural, which of course is a terrible idea. Then there's various other operations, giving you sort of a timeline through the 1960s. And then we have the unnatural itself. So we have things like unnatural tomes, hypergeometry, which is using rituals basically and spells. We have the hidden world. So these are aspects of Earth history that are unknown to the average person, but the Delta Green operative will know about. That includes other dimensions, other worlds, places that you can customize for yourself, alien intelligences, avatars of the Headless One, colors out of space, deep ones, ghouls, all these kind of Lovecraftian classics are detailed here. A very detailed table of contents you can see, which is nice. Then we get the great old ones themselves, the star gods, gods of Earth, gods of the dreamlands, the cosmic gods, the Hastur mythos, what happens when you encounter these entities, targets of opportunity that you might find in your investigations, which are cults, basically, that are connected to these entities. And then we have the Handler's Handbook from page 307 onwards, so how to run the game, how to get the Delta Green feel across, and then we have a sample adventure as well, and some wonderful, useful back matter here, including conversion notes from Delta Green, some examples of sources that you can use to get the right vibe for the 60s, and then we have agent record sheets, handlers, agent tracking sheets, hit threshold modifier sheets, all the different combat options are included on those, a list of Kickstarter backers, and an index. So it's a massive tome, and actually, unfortunately, it's out of print at the moment. I got a very good deal on this on eBay, which was a lucky break. So normal retail price is £50. I got it for 22, so hooray for me. But yeah, it's difficult to find at the moment, and Pelgrane is kind of, as I've been saying in previous videos, they are switching over to different printers, I believe. So I'm sure that by the time the Borellus Connection campaign comes out, they will have a new print run of The Fall of Delta Green available so that people can buy the campaign as well. It would make a lot of sense otherwise to release a giant campaign without the core book available. You can, of course, buy the PDF from the Pelgrane site, from DriveThruRPG or various other places. Getting the hardcover is a little bit difficult at the moment, but I managed to grab one up just recently and just in time to make this video, in fact. So we have our initial briefing. It sort of rehashes a little bit what was said on the back page. Basically, it's 1968. The stars are coming right. Things are going crazy in the world itself. And now we have the unnatural threats coming to the fore as well. Delta Green is an authorized but unacknowledged black program of the United States National Security Establishment. Its personnel are tasked from all branches of the federal government, especially from the military, law enforcement, and intelligence communities. The program is classified top secret, with its existence and mission known only to holders of Delta Green clearance. They have a small permanent staff deep in the bowels of the Pentagon, but its agents operate in secret. The program buries Delta Green missions inside other ongoing military operations or disguises them as training exercises, liaison work, or entirely unrelated investigations. Delta Green agents hold normal federal postings in the military, CIA, FBI, NSA, or some other agency. Their employers never understand the real mission of the program. So that shows you the level of secrecy here. So we're talking about CIA and NSA and FBI agents who continue their normal jobs in those agencies but are also in Delta Green, and their employers don't even know what their real job is. So what is The Fall of Delta Green? So they talk about how this is an adaptation of Delta Green, the role-playing game, into the GUMSHOE system, and sets it as a prequel in that game's backstory, specifically in the decade when Delta Green destroys itself by overreach, basically. So on the 24th of July 1970, the Joint Chiefs of Staff officially disbanded Delta Green, and it becomes an illegal conspiracy burrowing into the walls of the federal government. Until that date, you have a warrant to save the country and the world. So your role as a player is to take on that of a Delta Green operative, asset and friendlies in deadly one-shot adventures or in a campaign spanning the years from hope to madness. So things you might do, including hunting deep ones, or Migo in the Himalayas, investigate the dangerous visions of radical artists in New York or radical chemists in San Francisco, search and destroy death cults of alien gods in the dark heart of the Congo or Vietnam, somehow contain and erase horrific manifestations and unearthly nightmares in the wide-open heartland and in the riot-torn cities of America, preserve the secret of Delta Green against investigative journalists, communist espionage, and their own allies in the CIA and FBI, investigate and covertly thwart Majestic 12 and other secret technocrats who foolishly believe the unnatural can be exploited and weaponized. So that's a lot. That's a lot to do. A lot on your plate. They also sort of clarify some terminology here. So Delta Green agents are known as agents, and the GM role is referred to as the handler, which is a contraction of asset handler. That's the role of the person who deals with field assets when they're running some kind of covert operation. So then they talk about the units of time, which again we've seen in other areas of the GUMSHOE system. Then, of course, the use of dice, which is very much simplified in this system compared to the original Delta Green RPG. As with other GUMSHOE games, you just need a single D6 basically to run this game. Occasionally you'll need a D3 roll, so you just, 1 to 2 is a 1, 3 to 4 is a 2, 5 to 6 is a 3, and then you have a D3 from a D6. Very simple. And this here is the page I was talking about. It's an excellent one-page summary of what GUMSHOE is, and it's beautifully done. So GUMSHOE games are about solving mysteries by accumulating clues. In GUMSHOE, if you have the ability, you get the clue, no roll needed. Then they talk about investigative abilities always work, even if you only have a rating of 1 and a pool of 0. You can spend investigative points to get special benefits, more information, better reactions from GM characters, a juicy role-playing moment, etc. General abilities, by contrast, might fail. They don't fail if you use them investigatively, but if you're trying to take a high-speed turn on a muddy Cuban cliff road in a Jeep, for example with the drive skill, you might be able to fail. A general ability rating of 0 represents at best bare civilian competence. Drive 8 represents and serious mastery, you're the team's real artist. And to test the general ability, if you have a rating in it, roll a 6-sided die. Compare the results to a difficulty set by the handler from 2 very easy to 8 near impossible or even higher. If you match or exceed the difficulty, you succeed. An average, somewhat challenging task has a difficulty of 4, so you'll succeed about half the time, but you can spend points from your pool for the general ability to increase your chances of success. So the more points you have in the pool, the better off you'll be. And that's basically all you need to understand what GUMSHOE is. Beautifully summarized with bolded phrases used correctly to draw your attention to the right places. It's fantastic. Every game should start with that, in my opinion. Whoever did that was a genius. So now we get into character creation. Player characters are assumed to be realistically trained, capable operatives of the United States federal government. You may bring any number of changes on the above assumption in your own campaign play, of course. You can play older agents past their prime or civilian assets, but as a default, everybody gets their ticket punched by Uncle Sam. So the general character generation summary here. Determine your investigative ability point budget, as per page 20, which we'll get to. You get 65 general ability points, and you get some free ability ratings. So you get Agency 2, Athletics 2, Bureaucracy 2, Health 4, Network 5, Sanity 5, and Stability 5. Notice the return of Sanity, which we didn't see in Night's Black Agents. Then you determine your military service and apply the corresponding template, subtracting the points on that template from your point budget. Active duty personnel can skip the next step, which would be selecting your department, apply the corresponding template, again subtracting the points on that template from your point budget. Go through the list of investigative abilities and see which ones remain unrepresented in your player group. Make sure that for each ability, at least one agent has at least one rating point in it. And again, that's always the case for GUMSHOE games. You want to cover all the investigative abilities in your group. So the session 0 should definitely be used. Player characters should be built as a group to make sure that everything is covered. If you're using special training, which is an optional rule, you can select your free special training skill and purchase any further special training skills with build points. Then you describe your bonds and motivations, and then complete your agent with personal details. If the handler wishes, they can add damage consistent with prior service in Delta Green and the revelation of the truth of reality. So the United States military officially desegregated in 1948, so combat branch military agents can be of any race. There are officially no women in combat positions. 90% of the female personnel deployed in Vietnam, for example, are nurses. That leaves 10%, not just clerk typists, but intelligence officers, electronics operators, and even trainers for South Vietnamese combat troops. Players and handler could decide together whether to deal with the sort of institutional discrimination of the time, or to ignore it. Just choose what's best for the table's drama and enjoyable play experience. Don't feel hamstrung by history that you have to oppress certain groups as they were oppressed in the past. A good message, I think, in these kind of games, as always. Creating characters, again, as per other GUMSHOE games, we limit the investigative build points according to the number of players in the group that regularly attend. That can be tricky, of course, if you have a modern group of adults with adult responsibilities, but nevertheless, you try to get people to commit to a campaign, or at least the one-shot. These is how you would divide your investigative build points per agent per the number of regular attending players. And then every agent will receive their general 65 ability points for general abilities. Buying rating points in a second agency, however, costs double. After allocating your free rating points, every rating point in an ability costs 1 of those build points, of those 65 points. Then again, you get your free points here. Then players may always, if they wish, exchange their free rating points for build points and other general abilities, although this is unlikely unsafe. Then we have some background templates. So this is your military service, which you subtract from your general build points as well. Then you will have your leftover build points after all the investigative abilities are covered between the group. Then everybody can use their leftover investigative or general build points to give them to various abilities. If you're feeling short on build points, you can sell bonds for build points. Lose 1 bond for an extra 2 investigative or 6 general build points. But that can be dangerous because bonds, as per the regular Delta Green RPG, are a way to basically project sanity loss onto one of your relationships with a real human being, which can save you from insanity or grabbing a disorder in a key moment, but it also would do long-term damage to your sort of out-of-uniform life, so you have to be careful about that. You can also save extra build points and use those as the situation arises to assign yourself additional abilities or to boost your ratings in the abilities you've chosen. When you choose to do this, you're not suddenly acquiring abilities on the spot, but simply revealing for the first time on screen what your agent has been able to do all along. I like that. It gives a bit of flexibility. So there's some ability twists are mentioned here, so almost all abilities work the same way, either as investigative or general abilities, but there are special few rules for a few exceptions. So agency, art, and foreign language keep being useful even if you buy their ratings higher than 3, which is, again, as we've seen with the other GUMSHOE games, is typically the upper limit what you should buy for an investigative ability. Buying points in the unnatural costs you potential sanity, and in some campaigns the handler might not allow you to buy the unnatural during character creation, or may insist that all agents have 1 point in it to represent their previous introduction into the nightmare world of Delta Green. Agency and network are extremely flexible in play. Health and stability are your hit points for physical and mental damage respectively, so you should remember to buy them up if you want to live. Basically, you can spend first aid and psychotherapy to restore lost health and stability points to yourself or to your fellow agents. And sanity is the ability to ignore the truth for tactical purposes at least, and thus continue operating against the unnatural. It is capped at 10 minus your rating in the unnatural ability, but if you can, you may want to buy it up to 9 for greater survivability. This is, again, more like Trail of Cthulhu. You want to keep your mind intact as much as possible. If you crumple under any encounter with the unnatural, you won't be of much use to the team or to Delta Green itself. Then we have tips on which investigative abilities to buy and a list of all of them in total. So again, we're looking at more modern era than Trail of Cthulhu. So we got things like astronomy, criminology, military science, occult, and the unnatural. Unnatural being the Delta Green's kind of specific terminology for the mythos type stuff. And we have intelligence agency terminology like human intelligence, inspiration, intimidation, reassurance, we've seen before, tradecraft, which we've seen in Nice Black Agents. And then we have technical abilities, which include things like chemistry, cryptography, data retrieval, fringe science, which is quite interesting. So could be looking at alien technology or a mythos-infected technology. Pharmacy, physics, SIGINT, which is signal intelligence. That's your ability to intercept and crack codes and signals from your enemies. Survival, traffic analysis, stuff like that. So then they go through how to buy general abilities, and basically it's similar to Nice Black Agents. Rating 0 means you're basically competent, but in an emergency, if things are going bad in the field, you'll be kind of useless. At 8, you're impressively expert, and the game mechanics allow you to guarantee yourself 2 or 3 automatic successes per day against most opposition. There's no set cap on abilities, but the second highest rating must be at least half that of the highest rating. So keep that in mind when you're distributing your build points. They give you an example here. If you wanted to have a huge amount of health of 30, that would mean you'd have to take at least one other ability at 15 in order to fulfill that rule. So it serves as a way to restrict you from making yourself into a big tank of flesh that can stop a bunch of bullets but does nothing else. Then I talk about some useful general abilities. So of course, athletics, health, stability, and at least one combat ability, up to 5 or 6 at least, is a good idea. Athletics at 8 once again is good because that raises your hit threshold, and then get one of your combat abilities to 8, 10, or higher. If you want to do social engineering, you'll want to buy some bureaucracy and network. Preparedness and sense trouble are good and are broadly useful, especially when you need something in the nick of time. Disguise and stealth will help you get past minor obstacles in your investigations, which can be helpful. If the team wants you to specialize in something, or they need a specialist in, say, sniping or some other aspect of combat or technical ability, then you should try to get an 8 or better in that specialty. So that puts you firmly in the expert category. So then we have our different templates for military service. You could be no template, which is no military service, and then you go on to pick your government department instead. You skip all this. You could be a peacetime conscription, so you've been drafted into the service. You get 2 investigative and 3 general points. You come with survival 1, firearms 1, unarmed combat 1, inspiration 1, foreign language 1, military 1, or military science 1. You pick one of those for investigative, and you pick 1 general, which is either drive 1 or mechanics 1. That's an example. So each template is not the same, but remember, each template is subtracted from your build points, so it all balances out in the end. You could be a medic, which gets you forensics, medicine, pharmacy, survival, bureaucracy, first aid, that kind of stuff. And for investigative, you can get biology or human, which are really useful. First aid is very useful in the field as well. We've got a little box here about military rank, and that will usually bring with it some level of inspiration or military science, perhaps agency and bureaucracy as well, depending. You could be Army Medical Corps, which is just the next level of medic, basically, or a psychiatrist, so you're kind of specialized. So you build a military mental health specialist as a regular medic, reduce first aid to 2, and increase bureaucracy to 4. Then you add agency 1, human 1, inspiration 1, interrogation 1, psychotherapy 7, and then you can pick medicine 1 or pharmacy 1. Which is pretty cool. You can have sailors or pilots, and there are different varieties of those as well. USAF SS Big Eye Operator. So that gives you some SIGINT abilities. You can be a soldier or marine, so you've got combat served in the past. Could be in World War II, Korea, or in Vietnam, which is still happening, of course, in this time frame. And if you're in active duty or in a combat zone, you can double all the ratings. For the optional abilities, either double the selected rating or pick 4 instead of 2. And then we get, again, much higher ratings than just the conscripted soldier. And the 2 general abilities that you could pick are really good. Conceal, demolitions, firearms, health, heavy weapons, melee weapons, stealth, unarmed combat, sense trouble. Lots of really useful stuff for a field agent. You could be a PSYOPs individual from the U.S. Army, so this is propaganda warfare influences. So you begin your agent by using the soldier template, and then you add this on top of it. So you'll get 10 more investigative and 10 more general points, which include things like human, bureaucracy, psychotherapy, stealth. Human, SIGINT could be chosen, as well as occult. For interpersonal, you can get flattery 2, inspiration 2, or reassurance 2. You can also be an urban intelligence specialist. Then we get to special forces. So here you get a lot of high point value abilities, but of course you're not left with much to build from at that point. So you have 9 investigative and 60 general points. You get things like athletics 6, firearms 6, melee weapons 6, lots of 6s. You can pick 3 investigative skills, which include things like SIGINT, survival, anthropology, inspiration, intimidation is quite useful, and certainly special forces agents tend to be intimidating. And you can pick 2 general abilities, which are, again, a lot of excellent combat skills at 5. To start with. Now, if you skip past all that and you're not in a military department, then you can choose from other departments. So you could be an ARPA researcher, often known as DARPA, due to their connection to the Defense Department. So they will be more skilled in things like military science, physics, bureaucracy, mechanics, astronomy, chemistry, and other sciences. You could be the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. So they investigate and thwart criminal activity within the Air Force and espionage against it. You're going to be dealing more with human intelligence, bureaucracy, criminology, different kinds of analysis of stuff like that. You could be part of the Atomic Energy Commission. You could be from the CIA, of course, which is running assets to obtain secret intelligence from foreign countries and conducts operations to destabilize foes and counter foreign operations. The CIA, and thus Delta Green, has near carte blanche to operate overseas in the national interest. The CIA has not had a great history of success with that, but they do have that. If you go deeper, you can be a Directorate of Intelligence Analysts. That, as you might imagine, gives you a lot of investigative skills to choose from, along with some pretty strong skills in bureaucracy, drive, network, or preparedness. You can pick 2 of those. Then you can be a Director of Plans Case Officer. So here you have some high value abilities, but again, that will balance out as you'll have less points left over in your budget to add things on later. You could be a Director of Plans Operative. So they're kind of the field agents, if you like. So they have skills like survival, athletics, firearms, health, human, streetwise, and all this kind of stuff. You could be an Office of Research and Development Specialist. So they're more on the science end of things. They're good with networking, preparedness. They may also be able to provide stability, psychotherapy, stuff like that. You could be a Political Action Division officer, so this is propaganda again. So here you're dealing with bureaucracy, network, flattery, negotiation, reassurance. Special Operations Division operator. These are the paramilitary officers. So you take the Special Forces template and add a couple things to that. You can be a surreptitious entry specialist. So you're burglars, basically. So you'll gain some skills in tradecraft, stealth, and 4 investigative skills, which is pretty nice. And there's some sidebars here talking about the OSS and the agency ability for OSS. You can be Technical Services Division Designer. You support field agents by developing and improving bugs and SIGINT, concealed and exotic weapons, disguises, and forged documents. And skills that go along well with that, including quite high numbers for your general abilities in conceal, demolition, disguise, that kind of stuff. You could be from the CDC and work with diseases, so you know about forensics, medicine, chemistry, first aid and health, stuff like that. You could be in the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA. They have possible careers as an analyst. So again, you're looking at intelligence, military science, SIGINT, cryptography, etc. A military attaché. This gives direct access to American embassies and diplomatic resources for intelligence gathering. You need to be a soldier or marine or sailor or pilot background. And you can be active duty, and then you gain a bunch of new stuff, including some higher rankings in some general abilities, including athletics, drive, firearms, network 4, pilot 4. They're all 4s, basically. So not bad choices there. Defense Research Division, so from the Library of Congress. So here you'll be really into archaeology, foreign language, history, and the occult, for example. In the FBI, you can be a lab researcher, which again will get you more around the sciences end, but there will be basic FBI training that will help you with things like potentially concealing, firearms, first aid, health, and stuff like that. Special agents, they will get some additional points in certain categories and then add 3 to any of these abilities listed here, which include useful stuff like drive, firearms, sense trouble, and then they get some more very excellent abilities. Undercover agents, of course, you're going to be good at stealth, sensing trouble, all of these kind of things. Disguise, of course, at 4, stealth at 3, and black bag jobs we talked about before. So these are surreptitious entries against domestic targets rather than foreign targets. So you're a domestic burglar. rather than the CIA's burglar on foreign soil. You'd also be part of the FBN, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. So in 1968, it merged with the Bureau of Drug Abuse Control to become the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. In 1970, the BNDD director requests CIA assistance in investigating rampant corruption in his bureau. Delta Green is blamed, possibly justly, for using drug money stolen by its agents within BNDD as an off-book slush fund for its covert activities. Could that play a role in the upcoming campaign? Very possibly. You could be in NASA as well as an engineer. It's not a typical way to get into Delta Green, but sometimes those kind of skills will be useful. And that would include things like astronomy, biology, chemistry, science, SIGINT, mechanics, piloting, stuff like that. You could be the National Reconnaissance Office, the most secret agency of the U.S. government. It has never appeared in the newspapers or in open congressional testimony. It operates the Corona Reconnaissance Satellite Program and other even more secret missions. Even more promisingly for Delta Green, its budget is completely black and completely unaudited. It's a nice place to recruit from if you're Delta Green. And you start with some great abilities, including photography and SIGINT at 2, foreign languages and data retrieval at 2, bureaucracy 3, and mechanics 5, and then some really nice choices of investigative abilities. You could be from the NSA, so you'll have lots of SIGINT and cryptography possibilities there. Security specialists will have even more, plus abilities in things like cop talk, concealing and filching, firearms, stealth, so they are more of a field agent type. The ONI, the Office of Naval Intelligence, you start with the sailor template and then add these onto it. So you're a sailor who gets inducted into the intelligence part of the Navy, and that gives you access to a lot more interesting training that would be useful for Delta Green. You could be a TF-157 case officer, so I don't even know what that is, but you get some useful skills there, including one general, which could be athletics, bureaucracy, health, mechanics, some useful stuff there. You could be a State Department Foreign Service officer. You could be an INR analyst, Bureau of Intelligence and Research, INR, which collates raw intelligence product of U.S. embassies and subject matter specialists to provide overviews and up-to-the-minute briefings on regions, nations, or topics for the Secretary and for the rest of the federal intelligence community. So yeah, again, quite a useful background for a Delta Green agent. You're going to be collating lots of different types of data and be accustomed to doing that, looking for patterns to put together for your briefings. The Office of Security, SY, protects diplomats, investigates passport and security clearance fraud, and works with the Marine Corps to maintain embassy security. So here we get lots of useful stuff. The general abilities you can choose from include things like conceal, disguise, firearms, health, melee weapons, preparedness, all sorts of great field operative stuff. 2 interpersonal abilities include things that like interrogation, cop talk, streetwise, and you get the ability to add some really interesting points to some useful skills. You could be part of the U.S. Marshal Service. They track fugitives, provide protection for federal property and personnel, and handle federal prisoner transfers. There's no bureaucracy in the Marshal Service, little supervision, and excellent relations with local police, making them ideal Delta Green agents. It's quite interesting. So the less you're subject to bureaucracy and oversight, the more Delta Green is happy to have you, basically. So any Delta Green agent inserted into another agency may well have developed the following abilities out of sheer self-preservation. So Notice 1, because you're paranoid. Occult 1, which helps to spot potential spore and reports are in the field. So spore meaning the traces of the unnatural. Tradecraft 1, so that allows you to meet covertly with other Delta Green personnel or pass intel along. Conceal 2+, so providing a quick hiding place for an unlicensed sidearm or a false ID. Filch 2+, allowing the agent to abstract reports or artifacts from theoretically sealed or restricted archives to share them with Delta Green or destroy them if they reveal too much. Feel free to take any or each of these to match your idea of your agent. That's pretty cool, isn't it? And we have even more backgrounds. You can also be from the UK. You can see the Union Jack here. They have a table of UK and US equivalent agencies like the CDSC at the time in Britain was the equivalent of CDC. GCHQ is roughly like the NSA or NRO. Then some of them, they're a little bit more specific, which is nice. So Microbiological Research Establishment, or MRE, is like a CDC researcher plus biology 2 and military science instead of cop talk. So it's nice that they added that specificity to it. Other backgrounds, so these are like civilian backgrounds. You could be an activist. Just because you want a revolution doesn't mean you want Nyarlathotep. You work with the pigs because, hey, at least you're both mammals. That's a pretty interesting description. As an archaeologist, you might have dug up something best left buried, you want it reburied, and your new government associates have the biggest shovels around. You'd be an engineer or technician that stumbled on something on a deniable majestic contract, perhaps. You could be a gangster, sort of helplessly involved in a turf war that has gone really out of control. You could be a physician who patched up some very peculiar wounds for some men with short haircuts, and then you saw what made those wounds. You could be a pilot, flying spy planes or combat missions, or in some deniable operations, or perhaps you're in the wrong sky at the wrong time. You could also be a scholar, so, somebody who has very specific abilities that are needed for a Delta Green mission, like translating some ancient languages or stuff like that. Or you could be a tribal fighter, so somebody that you were recruited from, say, Vietnam or somewhere in Laos or whatever, and you decided to help the American side rather than the local communist resistance. Really, you can be almost any kind of personality in the intelligence world that you can imagine in this game, just like in Delta Green itself. So bonds, Bonds, I think, are an amazing innovation in a horror game. I think they're fantastic in Delta Green, and they work just as well here. So each agent begins with 3 bonds, and each bond begins with a rating equal to 1 higher than your agent's highest ability rating from amongst the following interpersonal abilities. That's flattery, inspiration, negotiation, and reassurance. These abilities at least pay lip service to understanding another person's needs. If you have no rating in any of these abilities, your bonds begin at 1. If your rating in that ability drops, each bond rating drops or raises by the same amount, and the maximum bond rating is 4. Bonds can weaken as you undergo the monstrous stresses of Delta Green service. You can strengthen a bond if you cultivate that bond between operations. You can define bonds in various different ways, but it must be a real person or a small group of people who are alive and who you can interact with between missions, and you should identify them specifically. So it could be your husband, your daughter, your grandma, your wife and kids. Temple Beth Israel is an example, my fellow survivors of the plane crash. So it could be a small group, or it could be an individual. You're pretty free to decide. The typical agent will begin with 3, but you can begin with 2 if you want to trade 1 bond for 2 investigative build points, 1 investigative and 3 general build points, or 6 general build points. Actually, you can do this twice. It says bring you down to 1 bond, but that could be quite dangerous. Or you can go the other way and trade build points for bonds at the same ratio. You can do this once for a maximum of 4 bonds. So when a bond deteriorates, the relationship it represents becomes strained. Just how is up to you and the handler to decide or depict in play. The handler may damage your bond due to actions not involving your agent's obsession and isolation. Your squad might get ambushed by the Viet Cong, and your partner may get lung cancer. The handler reduces that bond's rating by 1. If someone or every member of the group you have a bond with dies or goes permanently insane, that bond is destroyed and you cross it off your character sheet. When a bond's rating drops to -1, it is permanently broken and you cross it off. The only way to regain a bond with that GM character is to rebuild it from scratch by establishing a new bond. You can also develop bonds with your fellow Delta Green agents as well, and this goes through how that happens. So as you go through crises with your teammates, they may in fact become bonds for you as well. Then, as with other GUMSHOE games, it can be useful to have a motivation for your character, and here they have a mechanical boost as well, so you don't tell the handler when your motivation impels your agent to irrationally dangerous action. She will tell you. She might explain to you why your motivation would spur you to action. Better yet, she could prompt you to explain it. When invoking motivations, a handler should take care not to guide the player's specific response. The goal is to lead that player to move forward, not to force a particular choice. You're never obligated to obey your motivation. By exerting unusual force of will, you can control your behavior, but at a price. So if you refuse to follow your motivation, you get grave mental stress, and you therefore lose between 2 and 5 pool points from stability, which is quite a bit. The handler will determine the level of stress damage depending on how hard the stimulus punches the agent's buttons. And then we have certainty refreshes. So if you dive into the situation and follow your motivation, you may allow the agent to refresh 1 or 2 pool points in any general ability, reflecting the inner certainty that comes from following deep-seated psychological motivation. And of course, there are some example motivations. Some of them presume knowledge of the unnatural, but depending on the campaign, they may not be appropriate if you haven't had a chance to encounter it yet. So it could be altruism, you want to protect people; atonement, you did something wrong and you want to sort of atone for that sin that you've committed. It might be comradeship, you crave the bonds in battle in the field. You feel it's your duty to take down the cults and horrible things threatening the world. You love solving mysteries. It could be patriotism, you feel that you need to defend the United States from these outer terrors. It could be revenge, perhaps the unnatural or occultist took down somebody you loved. You're just a thrill seeker. You wanted to find the most dangerous job imaginable and go for it. You can also change your motivation. That could be something organic that happens during the course of play. If it's something like, I don't like playing this motivation anymore, then consider seeking a glorious and informative death for your current agent and starting over with a character better suited to your new desires. I like that advice. Personal details. So this is where you flesh out your agent's name, a detail or 2 about their age, ethnicity, and appearance. Where did they grow up? Did they go to college or go straight into the service? What are their hobbies, beliefs, obsessions, taste in music, etc.? What do they drink? Do they smoke? Something you admire about the agent, something that people dislike about them. And why does Delta Green trust them to confront the unnatural and keep them secret? And why does your agent agree with that idea? And how does that feed their motivation? So they do want you to put a decent amount of thought into your backstory in this game. But I think a lot of that, you can pick up, even if you're relatively new to this kind of idea of backstory, by looking to your templates, your character's service record, what they've done, what their role is, will give you an idea of what kind of activities they find interesting, and perhaps that gives you a window into who you might see them as a person in earlier life. What kind of person would become a member of a top secret NSA field agency role, that kind of thing. So if you're playing a Delta Green agent, it's likely that they have past experience with the unnatural. You could even play out the inciting event that led to you understanding the truth of the unnatural. And then, so changes will happen to your abilities because of this event. So you choose from one of the 4 options and then build some details around it. So it might have been that you witnessed extreme violence. And each of these 4 options, extreme violence, captivity or imprisonment, hard experience, things man was not meant to know, they will influence some of your abilities. So, for example, extreme violence adds 1 to occult, military science or criminology, reduce stability by 1, remove 1 point for interpersonal ability, add 3 to sense trouble, and lower 1 bond strength by 1, and your agent is adapted to violence, which means that when violence is going on, they will lose less stability because of it. So each of these different experiences has quite an impact on your character and can really have a long-lasting imprint on how they develop as an agent, which I think is really cool. I won't go through the rest of them because I think it's fun to discover these during character creation for yourself. Then, of course, we break down the different abilities in detail, as is traditional for GUMSHOE. A lot of these are really similar to what you find in Night's Black Agents, so I'll just gently flip through and let you admire the lovely layout, all with the black triangle to remind you what game you're playing, and the lovely bits of atmosphere scattered around. Wino lying ability is a nice little sidebar here. So things like flattery and stuff like that, cop talk, these abilities imply that you can tell things that people want to hear. So just having a lying ability by itself is not very informative, a bit too general, and the system's not built to really do that. It's more around having specific abilities that have specific ratings, and you can use them a certain number of times when you try to really work around your limitations and work with your strengths. Lying is too broad a category for this kind of system. Yeah, so we'll just flip through. There's some interesting censored people here. Somebody in a black hood. There's a skull and a raven and some creepy occult things. As with the regular Delta Green line, there's a lot of great atmosphere in this book, as well as the Pelgrane's requisite huge amounts of rules detail. I mean, they really don't waste words in these books. So the unnatural is an important ability, of course. It's kind of like the Cthulhu Mythos ability in Call of Cthulhu. The more your unnatural ability goes up, then it costs you both sanity and stability. When you use it, it costs stability, and it reduces your maximum level of sanity the higher your unnatural ability is. But you can use your unnatural ability just to understand the source of something unnatural that you encounter. So it is really useful, but it's costly to your long-term mental health and your connection to reality. So then we get into the general abilities. So these are the ones that you can fail. You will have a difficulty set by the handler. Difficulty 4 would be a standard task. Difficulty 6 would be something that you have to pull strings to get, in this example of bureaucracy. Difficulty 8 would be something you have no business asking. For some of these abilities, they give you guidance about what sort of difficulty to set. There's also modifiers as well. So if you are trying to requisition something from state or local agencies or rival divisions of your own agency, add a further 1, +2 for other federal agencies or military branches, by +3 for agents of other governments. So you could end up with really high difficulties for bureaucracy if you're trying to manipulate things in your way. But as with all general abilities in GUMSHOE, you roll a die, you spend points from your pool if needed, or if you want to, and you need to beat the difficulty number set by the handler. So very, very simple. All you need is 1d6 per player, but the richness of the Delta Green world still comes through very much so in the mix of abilities, the addition of bonds, the addition of the many branches of military background and government and outside of government service. It's really, really well done as a translation. So if you're a fan of the Delta Green world, this book will certainly be right up your street. Now you have an optional rule here, so you can get special training. So it functions as both an investigative ability on that subject and as a bonus to general tests of abilities while using that trained skill. For example, an agent with scuba special training can recognize the Soviet aqualung or spot tampering with a dive set in an investigative test, or get a +2 bonus on athletics tests of swimming with scuba equipment, which is the general ability. And they give loads of examples. So you might be an astronautic pilot, you might be a pickpocket, you might be an expert at card cheating, which would help you in filching, clinical hypnosis for psychotherapy, all kinds of cool stuff in here, which is really useful. If you can't justify already having special training in a skill, or the handler wants to raise the cost of adding new special training skills in the game, you have to use your time between operations on a special training course. This will mean you reduce 1 non-Delta Green bond by 1 as you neglect your life responsibilities. So again, the bonds come in to reflect the impact of your choices as an agent for Delta Green on your real-world connections. What few things tie you down to consensus reality. So the different ways to get special training. So it typically comes from an agent's military or federal service, and the handler could decide to charge you as well. Generally, the cost of that would be 2 build points. Or you can, for example, spend 6 build points to grant your agent special training in one particular make of firearm, and that would increase the damage of that firearm permanently in your hands by +1. So a light firearm would have a value of d6 +1, and a heavy firearm d6 +2. Against that, only the first attack you make with it in any given combat gains a +2 firearm special combat training ability test bonus. You can also get melee and combat special weapons training. And then we get into the general rules. We've got some beautiful atmospheric artwork here. We've got strange circuit diagrams. We've got a creepy photograph of a couple of dice, a quote from Lovecraft, a torn off bit of paper explaining how the game works. The fall of Delta Green occurs in a world where everyone, not just the federal government, believes their problems have solutions, that the world means something, and that working together we are greater than we are alone. This is a lie. The solutions, whether of science and schematics, or of samadhi and sinsamiya, all erode to the bedrock of true reality, a malign universe which, when discovered, ushers in disintegration and chaos. Beneath the gray flannel suits, behind the tie-dye, humans are terrified primates aching to howl in glory in a holocaust of chaos. And worse things wait to feast on those squealing semi-apes, to eel through the dimensions and drown everything. Welcome to the truth. The dice represent this uncaring cosmos where plans and ideals, peace and love matter less than a single atom drifting in the galaxy. All you can do is rage against doom, burn out your mind and body, and damn your non-existent soul, keeping your family, your country, your planet ignorant and safe for one more day. So Delta Green has a heavy dose of fatalism to it. I would say even more so than Call of Cthulhu, and that's something I really like about it. There's this kind of ice-cold nihilism that lies behind the Delta Green world. Agents basically have to accept that at some point, the unnatural will overwhelm us. There's no way we can come together enough or fight back well enough to stop it. These forces are too powerful, uncaring, and brutal, but we just try and hold them back for another day, just one more day of human existence before the chaos and brutalism of this reality overwhelms us. And the campaigns for Delta Green, and I'm sure likewise the Borellus Connection campaign for this game, certainly reflect that in the way they're constructed, and in particular, Impossible Landscapes for Delta Green is a fantastic campaign. The new one about to come out, God's Teeth, is incredible as far as the fatalism side goes, and it's very, 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 very creepy. So I'm very excited for what they're cooking up for this system. So again, I'm not going to go through the rules a lot here because we're pretty familiar with stuff. I mean, it's same basic ideas as the more up-to-date versions of GUMSHOE, like Night's Black Agents. So spends and benefits for investigative abilities. So benefits can give you extra information, potential advantage in a future contest, extra time when you speed up an action, a favorable reaction from a GM character, less blowback from a certain course of action, or a personal insight for example, like a flashback scene or some dramatic moment. So as an example, you find the body of an old colleague. A trade craft spend lets you remember who he was, that he was a bulldog who never gave up on a file. Perhaps his records are still around here. So whenever you want to spend for a given benefit, the handler always tells you how much it will cost. It is always to your advantage to propose cool benefits to the handler, even when she doesn't have anything specific written down or in mind yet. And I have to agree, if you got something cool that you think your spend of investigative points could do, propose it. Worst thing that could happen is the handler says, well, I don't think that really works here. There's not enough evidence in the scene to get you anything that powerful. And you move on. That's the worst thing that can happen. In the best case, you get a really cool flashback scene, you'll get some extra intel or some other benefit. You got failsafe clues as well. Then we've got general tests, simple tests, retries, piggybacking, as we saw in Night's Black Agents, also cooperation. So again, works the same where the assistant also contributes points and then you total them together -1. Apply that to the leader's dice roll, etc., etc. You can have continuing challenges that could take multiple tests to do sort of a longer term activity. Then you have contests between players, so player facing contests for quick, active, one and done, using athletics to toss a grenade into a Volkswagen. Full contests amp up the drama, their showdowns or main opponent sort of contests, such as using athletics to beat a rival skier to the bottom of the mountain. Chase contests fall between these two types. They provide more suspense and last longer than player-facing contests, but don't take over the story, i.e. using athletics to run away from a Cuban patrol on the way to the real mission. And then we go through how all that works, and now the stealth modifiers you can get for things like darkness, the use of flashlights, what happens when you get exhausted. So if you work too long or you face extreme danger without resting, you become exhausted. So typically, going a night without sleep or continuing strenuous activity after losing stability of your health will lead to exhaustion. And regardless of your health pool, you count as hurt. The difficulty number of all tests, including hit thresholds, increases by +1. And to spend points on an investigative ability requires a consciousness roll. So if you try to investigate something, you might pass out. Full night's sleep will cure it, but also while you're exhausted, you can't refresh general abilities that generally refresh after 24 hours. You can stave this off with stimulants. Chain smoking, pep pills, coffee will stave it off for 1 to 6 hours, so just roll a die for that. Amphetamines, cocaine, and other hard drugs will be 2 to 12, so 2 Ds for that. You can keep going with more stims, but the more stimulants you do, every dose after the first gives you D-2 of either health or stability. So, you can't push yourself to the limit forever. Then we get into examples of all the different kind of contests they outlined, including chase scenes, which again work just like Night's Black Agents. Then we get into combat. So standard combat, where it's a specialized contest, essentially, unarmed combat versus unarmed combat, versus melee weapons, or melee weapons versus melee weapons, firearms versus firearms if you're shooting at each other. Heavy weapons are a special, usually lethal case, and animals and some monsters use generic fighting ability rather than human-style unarmed combat, but the rules are the same. As with full contest, the combatants take turns. The fighter with the highest rating will get the initiative. In a fight, it's usually advantageous to strike first, and of course, surprise is a way that you can can do that. A combatant without ready weapons can spend 3 points of the relevant combat ability to quick draw a carried weapon and make it ready. Always useful to bear in mind. And then they go through the standard rules of initiative and combat order. Thresholds, which are typical 3 for a standard value, or 4 if the character has athletics of 8 or more. That's the difficulty number that the fighter's opponent must match or beat with a combat ability test in order to harm them. Creatures both natural and supernatural may have thresholds of 4 or higher, regardless of their athletic ratings. Extremely large creatures will usually have a hit threshold 1 lower. Cat-sized or smaller creatures will have higher hit thresholds. Between cover, darkness, called shots, and other modifiers, hit thresholds can escalate. Try to rebalance those values if you can. If one combatant has a hit threshold of 7 and one has a hit threshold of 9, run their combat as if they had thresholds of 3 and 5 respectively. This keeps fights shorter and more dangerous and therefore more exciting. Of course, running away is always an option, but the number of foes will increase the difficulty of running away. Then, of course, dealing damage if you exceed the hit threshold. Of course, you will have weapon damage modifiers according to the type of weapon you're using, all the way up to D+2 if you've got a very heavy firearm. But there's also special ammunition including armor piercing, which reduces armor ratings, hollow points that do more damage to unarmored targets, and they can be loaded with other things as well to contain poison or mercury or stuff. Incendiary rounds will have white phosphorus. They can trigger massive explosions. Rubber bullets, they double all armor ratings and do normal damage, but can't make you any worse than hurt, so you can't be killed by these. Finally, shotgun slugs instead of shells. They increase damage by +1 in range to long. Armor protects against shotgun slugs, but not at -2. They're like normal bullets. And shotguns don't gain the additional damage at close range. So again, it's all like Night's Black Agents. A new element here is lethality. So certain attacks inflict damage well beyond the possibility of survival. A burst of heavy machine gun fire or an artillery shell or a shotgun pseudopod makes fast work of human anatomy. Such attacks have a lethality rating. So if an attacker hits with a weapon that has a lethality rating, there's a chance it simply kills the target outright. Compare the results of the damage die rolled to the weapon's lethality rating, indicated by a number after the letter L. L2, for example. If the result is equal to or lower than the lethality rating, a human target immediately drops to -12 health. If the result is higher than the lethality rating, add that result to 5 times the lethality rating as damage. So as an example, we have a 60mm mortar shell with a lethality rating of L2. If the damage roll is 1 or 2, the target dies. If the result is 3, the target loses 13. So 2 times 5 equals 10 plus 3 equals 13 points of health, and probably dies anyway. So a mortar shell is a big deal. To give another examples with grenade and what to do if you have an asterisk. So if there's an asterisk, then damage roll 1 above the lethality reduces the target to -6 or seriously wounded. So grenades have that asterisk. That means if you roll a 1, the target is dead, but if you roll a 2, they're seriously wounded, which is interesting. You can also do the opposite and have non-lethal damage with grappling and stuff like that. But lethality is brought straight over from Delta Green. I love it for more modern era games where we have really powerful heavy weapons, machine guns, all this kind of stuff. That really, if you're out in the open, you get hit with a burst, you're just going to die. I mean, it's too much for the body to withstand. Then we have examples of weapon lethality going all the way up to lethality rating 4 asterisk, which is an airdrop general purpose bomb. So that means if you roll anything up to a 4, you're dead. If you roll a 5, you're seriously wounded. So that's pretty awful. Injury and death work the same as in the other GUMSHOE games. Basically, if you get -12 or below, you're dead. A -6 to a -11, you're seriously wounded, and you have to make a consciousness roll, and you'll keep losing health points without first aid. If your health pool is 0 to -5, you're hurt, and you must make a consciousness roll, but it's not a permanent injury situation. But then the pain that you're under will increase the difficulty of your tests and so forth. Combat conditions. So these are boundaries and guidelines for firefights and other sorts of combats. So killing people hardens the killer, by the way, and not in a good way. The operative word is sociopath. But if you don't harden yourself to your acts, your guilt tears at you. You see their faces at night. And for every time you kill a human being, you lose 1 rating point of stability, 1 point from a bond, or 1 rating point of any interpersonal ability, your choice. Haunted, hidden away, or hardened. You can rebuild a bond in your downtime. You can rebuild the lost stability and interpersonal points with experience points. If so, you're consciously dedicating effort that could have gone into other pursuits to remaining human. Congratulations. That's a very Delta Green way of expressing that situation. But again, the presence of bonds and stuff like that is so key to the feel of this game. And it's a beautiful translation over to GUMSHOE. It works really, really well. So we've got systems for exposed, partial cover, and full cover. We've got ammo capacity elements as well. We've got range bands, which are, pretty flexible, as with, most elements of combat in Delta Green. We've got point blank, close, near, and long. Depending on your weapons. There's a lethal range here, a damage range, and a debris range for explosions, which is pretty cool. So if you eat a grenade at point blank range, then you need a lethality roll for that. If you're within close, the damage will be dice +5. Rocket launchers, they have a bigger explosion, so you'll hit debris at near range. So if you're outside of the lethal or damage range, but within debris range, make an athletics test with the explosion's lethality rating ×3 as a difficulty. If you fail, you take a die of damage plus a modifier equal to the lethality rating. So again, explosions are a real big big problem in this game. One grenade can really screw up your day or that of several people at the same time. So if you see one, run the hell out of there. You spend whatever points you have to spend to survive, because that lethality will get you. And even at longer ranges, you can take a huge amount of damage, and which would probably kill you anyway. Or at the very least, leave you seriously wounded if you're unlucky on the die. And there's some combat options you can add. So auto fire. So here you would fire a 3-round burst, declaring that up front. Spend at least 3 extra firearm points and roll the die. For each 3 points in the margin of your result, you do 1 extra instance of damage to a maximum of 3. Fire a small arm on full auto, declare your action and spend at least 5 points and roll a die. You may also spend stability or athletics for this purpose, although only spent firearm points add to the total firearms result. Your damage becomes L1, so you gain lethality. Roll a damage die for each target down range within 2 yards either way of your point of aim. On a roll of 1, that target dies. So how hardcore is that? So there's an example here. So Sanchez charges down the stairwell into a cellar full of cultists. He decides to rock and roll firing on full auto. His firearms pool is only 3, so he spends 1 of those points and 2 each from stability and athletics. The handler randomly decides that of the 8 cultists in the cellar, 6 were inside the firing radius. So he rolls 6 dice. 2 come up 1, so those are dead straight away. The next 4 lose 7, 8, 8, and 10 points of health respectively. All of them had health 7, so 3 drop to 0 or worse, lose 6 more to become seriously wounded. And the last 3 cultists standing probably scatter or drop to the ground in panic. So not bad going, Sanchez. So again, automatic weapons, big deal. I think that's a great rule to have. Shot dry. So on a firearms or heavy weapons roll of 6 with full auto fire, you have shot the weapon dry and must reload. However, you can roll 2 instances of damage for any 2 targets with extra chances for lethality. Undisciplined firers like civilians, most terrorists, many irregular or third world opponents shoot themselves dry on a firearms or heavy weapons roll of 1 or 6. A roll of 1 does not allow extra damage, however, even if it hits. The player decides if her agent is undisciplined. The handler decides if the agent's opponents are. 2 1 ability test rolls in a row with any full auto weapon indicate the gun is jammed. So then you need firearms or heavy weapons mechanic tests at difficulty 4 to fix in 1 round. Fixing it in 2 rounds is difficulty 3, and 3 rounds is difficulty 2. So veterans of other GUMSHOE games may notice that these auto fire rules are extremely deadly, and that's very true, especially compared to nice black agents. This is because fully automatic weapons, especially against nearby targets, are extremely deadly. There are recent doughboys called the Thompson submachine gun the trench broom in World War I. So if you're worried about game balance, you could implement some optional rules here to basically have some extra consequences. So fully automatic weapons are not standard issue. You can enforce the shot dry and weapon jams rules, tell the players they'll have to count their ammo expenditure, enforce the death and consequences rule from the box on page 95, rule that fully automatic weapons fire is very, very loud, not often in keeping with your covert actions as Delta Green, and your foes will often have AK-47s, which are also capable of full auto, so they can kill you pretty quickly as well. You could do called shots, which is of course the ability to aim for a specific spot. These can be really useful if, somebody has a really terrifying weapon, you need to disarm them. You can do that, so there'll be a modifier to the hit threshold. If you want to do things like shoot the weapon out of somebody's hand, take out an eye, or a large carried object like a rocket launcher, you can also get additional damage depending on where you hit. So if you hit in the head or a limb, you'll get +2 additional damage, but only for the head. That's a really nice rule as well. So there's just enough variety in combat here, plus additional optional things like garrots, strangle people. You can really evoke that feeling of being a field agent. We have disarm attacks, we have critical hits. So when the total margin of the target's hit threshold is 5 or more, you score a critical hit. So you roll 2 instances of damage and add them together. And the enemies can do that as well, so beware. If you go evasive, you opt to fight defensively. And for every 2 athletic points you spend, your hit threshold increases by 1 for a maximum increase of 3. So you can make yourself harder to hit. If you are sniping and you have a firearms rating of 8 or more and you have a rifle, you can decrease the hit threshold of a target for a single firearms attack by taking at least 1 round to aim. If the target is aware of you, the hit threshold decreases by 1. If he doesn't know you're there, it decreases by 2. If your rifle has a scope, you may make a sniping attack at extended range without paying the 2-point cost. Then you have suppressing fire, again, which works like in Nice Black Agents. Then we have some sample opposing forces: civilians, guard dogs, militia, police, thugs, soldiers. Here's a nice summary of the combat optional rules, which I think is really great. Then we have the life of dangerous. This is various hazards that can happen. So given the setting, we're talking about things like napalm, thermite, which are statted up here, along with, the effects of exposure, the acid damage. Full immersion will give you L1 each round, so watch out for that. You could also be blinded until you're healed. Impact damage, fire damage, drowning and suffocation, electricity and other shocks, extreme temperatures, freezing, heat, toxins. So they have different effects depending on the type of toxin. So there'll be an onset to how long they take to start working. The difficulty of the health test, plus L means add the lethality rating to the difficulty. That's no good. Results on a successful test is a minor. Severe would be a result on a failed test. So And then we have a great list of different toxins from anthrax and BZ nerve agent, fentanyl, heroin, LSD, nerve gas like sarin or VX, plague, radiation, spider venom, tear gas, all sorts. Then we get into stability or sanity, which will be familiar to you if you are a player of Trail of Cthulhu, so we'll go past a lot of that. And there's a nice sidebar here, as in Trail of Cthulhu, about role-playing instability, where you can add twitches or stutters and, start getting more and more paranoid and more bizarre in your behavior as your stability drops. And there are 3 types of threats to stability in Delta Green. They're violence, helplessness, and the unnatural. So violence and helplessness is when you're tied up or stuck in some situation where there's nothing you can do about it, or if you're a witness or participant in extreme violence. You make a stability test against a difficulty of 4, when you can spend stability points to give you a bonus, but you don't want to spend more than you have a chance to lose because you could end up going negative regardless. So stability tests in pitch blackness are +1 difficulty unless the stimulus that you're seeing is primarily visual. If you fail, you either suffer some negative result, usually giving into your own mental illness, or you lose a number of points from your stability pool in addition to any points spent on the test itself. The severity of the loss depends on the stimulus. So when an operation calls for a stability test, it will describe a stability test with a potential loss of 4 points as a 4-point stability test. If multiple bad stimuli occur during one scene, you only test stability when the potential stability loss increases. That's an important thing to remember. So here they have a nice flow chart of the violence and helplessness. So if you were hardened to violence, then yes, you do a stability test difficulty 2. If you can spend stability or bond points, that can help you out. If you can't, then you do a stability test difficulty 4, and so on and so forth. You go through the chart. You can end up being shaken, shattered, and all those effects that we're used to from Trail of Cthulhu and similar games. Here's examples of violent stimuli, things like seeing a fresh corpse, witnessing torture, you cripple an innocent, you kill someone in a fight, you seek grisly murder, you kill a friend, loved one, or a bond, would be the maximum of 8 potential loss. Helplessness, you get fired, you nearly get a bond or a teammate hurt or killed, a bond score reduced to -1 and gets crossed off, a bond or teammate is badly hurt or wounded, discover the corpse of a friend, loved one, or bond, you see one of your network contacts killed, all the way up to you see a friend, loved one, or bond killed in a particularly gruesome manner or in a way you accidentally caused or abetted. So yeah, not great. And then we have stability on the unnatural, gets its own flow chart as well, which is super duper useful again. So you start with an unnatural stability test with difficulty begins at 5, so already tougher. You can spend stability or bond points to help you. If you succeed at the test, there's no further stability loss. If you don't succeed, you lose stability. And we're back down into the flow chart before. You might end up being shaken, shattered, and all sorts of bad stuff can happen to you. And then there's an example of unnatural stimuli. This is a key part of Delta Green as well, that there's not just one type of loss of stability or sanity. Basically, violence and helplessness cause their own kind of stress, and the unnatural is even worse, basically. So as you note, from the flowchart, all stability tests begin at difficulty of 5 and go up from there. And you can lose quite a lot of stability through unnatural means, like witnessing a clearly unnatural or impossible killing, or you're attacked by the unnatural yourself, we could lose 5 points. If you're attacked by a single human or smaller unnatural creature, that's 6 points. If you're possessed, then you get 7 points. You speak with someone you know to be dead, that could be 7 points. It can really be serious personal horror vibes. You can also have psychological triage, however, to help you get some points back. For every 1 psychotherapy point spent, the recipient will gain 2 stability points back. Character is shaken, entering an acute episode, or otherwise acting in an erratic manner. You can spend 2 points of psychotherapy and a few minutes to talk them down into a state of temporary lucidity. You can then keep acting rationally unless something worse happens. You can also become hardened to trauma, so you can become adapted to violence or to helplessness. So that means you lose empathy. So if you have ratings in flattery, inspiration, reassurance, and negotiation will be capped at 1, and all your bond strengths are therefore capped at 2. So that really hurts your interpersonal life. Basically, you become a bit of a sociopath. If you're adapted to helplessness, your individuation and will to succeed suffers. You gain 1 fewer pool point from any refreshes during the operation, except from burning bonds, and lose 1 extra point of stability to any stress penalties during the operation. And adapting to the unnatural is just flat out impossible. It's so strange and so bizarre, there's no way to become adapted to it. It's harder to face in the first place, and you're likely to lose more stability. Now, you can give you some points on stability tests using some drugs like Valium, Librium. Heavy drinking or marijuana use can help you as well, but alcohol addiction or marijuana use can get you in trouble. Dismissal from the military or addiction in the case of alcohol. Sanity is affected by directly experiencing the unnatural. So there's basically 4 ways you lose sanity. So if your unnatural shock drops your stability to 0 or lower. If you use the unnatural ability, you lose sanity. If you perform a hypergeometric ritual, so you're using magic basically, or you behold one of the gods or titans behind the scrim of the universe. So you encounter the real horrors of the mythos, basically. Each time you are shaken by an unnatural encounter or attack, your sanity rating drops by 1 point. Each time you're shattered by an unnatural encounter or attack, so you're between -6 and -11, your sanity rating drops by 2 points. You can only suffer one such sanity rating loss, the most severe, in a given mission or operation. Then they talk about unnatural ability use. So you can get revelations or intuitions. You could learn, for example, that some aspect of the supernatural is behind this mystery, but you're not a lot of specifics. Or you might learn that it poses a clear and present danger to you or your loved ones specifically. Or you could learn that it could destroy the world or is doing so right now. And this truth proves your motivation to be meaningless or doomed. So you lose 8 stability and 3 sanity in that case. So yeah, you want to be careful when using these abilities. Clawing sanity back. You can seek refuge in denial. You can shut down to the experience of horror by fainting, or you can destroy the unnatural. Through denial, if at the end of the operation there's no proof of your experience, you gain 1 point of sanity back. That allows you to kind of deny that anything really happened, but that can conflict with Delta Green's ambitions because they often want to keep evidence of these things around for further study, and the handler may require you to take a mental disorder or some kind of cover memory describing what you think actually happened. You can't recover sanity without losing it first. If your sanity was driven to 0 or lower by the shock, you can no longer deny the terrible beauty of the unnatural, so you can't deny it anymore. If the player wishes, he may declare it as the agent faints dead away rather than fully absorbing a given unnatural experience. Such an agent loses only 1 sanity pool point and it does not necessarily become shaken or shattered, but may play no further role in the scene. That will save you from big potential sanity loss, but you can leave your friends to eat it, so just be careful about that. If you destroy the unnatural, so that can help you get points back, you feel a sense of victory. If you destroy a danger to innocence, you get 1 sanity. Destroying a danger to the entire US restores 2 sanity. You can never restore more than 3 during or after any one operation. And you can never destroy the unnatural to bring sanity higher than its max, which is 10 minus whatever your rating in the unnatural ability is. Each agent who was directly involved in putting a threat down gains this sanity recovery. Then we get into mental disorders, so these can manifest as acute episodes. So this is kind of like in Call of Cthulhu where you have a bout of madness, and you can get different kinds of disorders depending on the cause of your trauma. So from violence, you can get addiction, aggressive tendencies, fixations, gross stress reactions, nightmares, paranoia. For helplessness, you can get addiction, anxiety, neuroses, conversion reactions. Superficially, you seem fine, but you can get sort of hysteric blindness or deafness or paralysis. You can become depressive or dissociative. You can get a phobia. For the unnatural, you can get amnesia, where you forget everything about the traumatic experience. In an acute episode, you immediately recall your trauma and immediately lose the stability and sanity costs associated with it the first time. Or you enter an amnesiac fugue state and begin wandering around not knowing anything about yourself, including how to fire a weapon. You can become a megalomaniac, so you think that you're kind of humanity's last hope or the chosen one to have viewed such a remarkable thing. You could break up your opponent into multiple chunks to try and make a thing easier to deal with. And in an acute episode, you would shift into an alternate identity. You get nightmares, paranoia, schizophrenia, which is very much losing contact with reality, very much a psychosis. An acute episode would be all of the kind of terrible delusions and visual and auditory hallucinations, but worse, you are also shaken. Get +3 to all difficulties of all rolls. Then we get into refreshment and recovery, which work very similarly to the other GUMSHOE games. However, you can also have havens, like a bar, an all-night diner, a car trip, a church, or whatever, where you're free from danger for an hour or more. Then you can fully refresh up to 3 general abilities, except for bureaucracy, health, network, sanity, and stability. So health rating refreshes over time, 2 points per day of rest, but seriously wounded characters heal at a different rate and need hospitalization. Use of first aid can restore some health during the session. Stability doesn't refresh automatically, so basically you can recover some stability by destroying the unnatural, which we talked about before, or another agent can spend psychotherapy pool points to permit you to recover some stability during a session, and if you have an addiction, you can refresh 2 points of stability by engaging in your addiction. Otherwise, you refresh stability by engaging in your personal life between missions, so that's when you talk to your bonds and so on. At the end of an operation, you get 2 experience points for every session that you participated in. This assumes a small number of 3 to 4 hour sessions, so you can modify it accordingly. You can use those points to acquire new abilities or bolster existing ones. You can increase stability or health with experience. You increase your pool along with your rating. You cannot increase your sanity with experience. The only way to increase your sanity rating is by destroying the unnatural. You can also reassign 1 or 2 build points from one ability to another, justifying it as skill atrophy, which should have some sort of roots in in-game experiences or just change priorities for the character. And then we get back to the world. So after your mission, what happens? And that's one of the great parts of Delta Green as well, is it really examines what do these horrible experiences do to you. So you kind of do a home vignette scene, play them out between missions. That could be, reflecting damage or breaking of your bonds, permanent injuries that that you gained during the operation or mental disorders that you gained, blowback on your official cover job for your operation. Did you have to lie to your superiors, abuse your authority, steal government property, that kind of stuff. You can try to rebuild bonds. You play a happy or hopeful vignette, increase the bond by 1, and refresh D-2 stability if you spend interpersonal points on a difficulty 4 stability test. You can also spend time alone with nature and do a similar sort of thing. You can establish a new special bond. So you spend one interpersonal point and roll a die, and do not refresh the interpersonal point before your next mission. Also reduce one non-Delta Green bond point by 1 as you neglect them for the new person in your life. If you roll a 1, however, they reject the bond and you lose 1 stability point. On a 2 to 5, you bond successfully. Subtract 2 from the die result and that's your new rating. So you can begin with a bond of 0. On a 6, you bond successfully with a rating of 3, and you get to refresh the interpersonal point you spent as well. And you play out the scene then to represent that result. You can also choose other things to do rather than working with your bonds. You can try to seek help with your mental stability if you're really struggling. You can get psychotherapy. You can try to recruit a GMC psychologist through your network ability or use bureaucracy to find a government therapist. You can stay on the case. So you reduce one non-Delta Green bond by 1 as your obsession kind of drives regular folk in your life away. And you spend 1 point of criminology, French science, or occult, which does not refresh before the next mission. You do, however, uncover some pertinent fact, insight, or valuable clue to an ongoing investigation or operation, though perhaps not one you're immediately tasked for. Refresh D-3 stability as you come to terms with the horror of the past. You can also study the unnatural. So again, you reduce 1 bond by 1. You can gain 1 hypergeometric potential point or learn 1 ritual. Make a difficulty 5 stability test. If you succeed, nothing else happens. If you fail, lose stability. On a failed 1, lose 3 stability and gain 1 rating point in the unnatural. And the handler will then narrate a brief vignette of your unnerving experience. It's pretty cool. You might also be disciplined if you violated protocol. If the mission was a big success for Delta Green, however, even if you did wrong stuff, higher-ups may put a word in and lower the difficulty of the bureaucracy test. But you can get fired from your job, potentially, by what you've done to help Delta Green succeed. So you reduce your bonds, including your Delta Green bonds, D+3 total points. Getting fired from a cover job doesn't have much impact on being in Delta Green. You can be transferred to a new, more Delta Green friendly desk somewhere, or you may technically be a fired civilian with even less access to resources, but you'll still get the call and be expected to join the next operation because the mission supersedes everything. You can also get prosecuted. I'll leave that as an exercise for the reader because that's quite exciting. So then we get into tools of the trade. Again, we have this lovely sort of patchwork of cool stuff: grenades, guns, some electronics. Delta Green agents are federal employees, and they typically have a lot of resources. Typical stuff like meals, tanks of gas, etc. are only difficulty 1 to requisition with tests of preparedness. The more difficult the item is to get, like a plane ticket or a rented villa or something like that, the higher the difficulty will be. If you requisition from your superiors, local liaison, from your Delta Green case officer, it's sort of on loan to you, and you make a bureaucracy test using the difficulty number in the expense table, which is over here, and then you use the modifiers from the bureaucracy ability and from the table below to adjust the difficulty. For example, if it's a high priority mission, the difficulty will be 1 less. If it's low priority mission, routine, we get +2. If it's a classified item, +2, that kind of thing. You can also use illicit funds, which could be pretty interesting, and I think the Borellus campaign, again, will have something to say about that, just from the hints I've seen about it. You can buy it using the expense categories. Yeah, making a major expense for personal funds automatically reduces all of an agent's non-Delta Green bonds by 1 due to financial stress, so be careful of that. Buying guns is pretty easy in the United States, but certain states, of course, if you want to buy a gun for yourself that's semi-auto or automatic, that could be much higher. If you need extra unregistered firepower, you need extra streetwise points if you want to buy illegal guns. You can make stuff as well if you have mechanics skills and materials to hand, or you could use chemistry to make things like napalm or all kinds of stuff like that. They give some examples. Making things can take hours, days, or weeks if it's things like vehicles or complex machines. Then here's an example of equipment that was sort of new in this decade to give you an idea of where we are compared to today's technology. So the first industrial robot, 1962. The laser was invented in 1960. The Selectric typewriter in 1961. The Cray CDC supercomputer in 1964. The Moog synthesizer also in 64. The PDP-8 mini computer, 65. Computer mouse was invented in 68. ARPANET in 1969. And the Boeing 747 in 1970. How about that? So it gives you a nice sense of place and time. We get into specifics of comms equipment, so field radios and stuff like that, demolitions equipment, flare guns, grenades, setting up different kinds of booby traps, explosives, tear gas, white phosphorus, thermite, stealth equipment like liquid freon to turn paper transparent so you can read a sealed envelope without opening it, forcible lockpick guns, rebreathers, but it's tricky and exhausting to use, noise suppressors for firearms, so these are more on the realistic side compared to silencers in a cinematic game. And we have surveillance equipment like fibroscopes, night vision optics, the SRT-3 transmitter. Its signal has a range of 1/3 of a mile, but its battery can only be used for about a week. You can have tracking beacons clipped or magnetically attached to a target like a vehicle. And then there's a nice sidebar on using bugs and how to detect them. Then we got different kind of vehicles. So lots of appropriate vehicles for the era. Harley Davidson motorcycles, VW Beetles, VW microbus if you want to be hippie style, fire trucks, different military trucks, Boeing airliners, fighter jets, jet bombers, F-4 Phantoms, all that kind of good stuff, along with their speed in miles per hour, their maneuver capacity, and some extra notes on weapons and things like that. Then tactical fact-finding benefits. This is where you blend your investigative and combat abilities to produce tactically useful and game mechanically significant results. Yeah, the investigative ability must be used to gain the advantage. The action is required to find the information, and the tactical circumstances under which the benefit comes into play, and the nature of the benefit. So other investigative abilities can also yield plenty of useful information in these circumstances. So like human can predict where the enemy will make a stand. Traffic analysis can estimate the reaction time of off-site reinforcements, blah, blah, blah. Similar to Night's Black Agents. So we're getting the updated GUMSHOE rules coming to the fore here, which is nice to see. Then we have tradecraft. For Delta Green, staying clean is key, and covering up your missions as well. If you're dealing with local law enforcement, you'll have to come up with a cover for the mission. For your government level, you have to use bureaucracy to arrange your orders, your budget, use cop talk, inspiration, military science, or agency spends to convince the police or other agencies to get you manpower and stuff that you need. Bureaucracy will help you avoid taking the blame. You can create an agent's cover with human or tradecraft, maybe using art forgery to falsify papers or a fake ID to bolster your cover. So yeah, there's a lot you need to do and can do to cover your mission's tracks. You should also have a safe house of some kind, so you can use your network to find that. Your agency may have some, but if you're working with Delta Green, you'll need something even safer than that. Finding a safe house is increasingly difficult depending on the size of the city, smaller cities being more difficult. Suppressing evidence is also useful, so you can use filter stealth to intercept and steal evidence from a crime scene, which was pretty terrible. If it's in an evidence locker, you may need to do some cop talk or law or bureaucracy. That might leave a paper trail. You can use surveillance to try and make sure you strike at the right time, and so there's less to clean up after yourself. You can do stakeouts. You can use tails by vehicle or by foot, so there's rules for that as well. Progressive tail, just intended to map the target's usual daily or weekly routine. Tailed agents will test stealth modified by their follower's stealth modifier. And then there's the human element. If you can't surveil a target, then you need to use human sources. So that's going to be asset running, searching for people and arresting them, interrogating people, using polygraphs, occasionally torture, truth drugs, medical treatment, perhaps. And you might need to dispose of a body if things get too far. So, yeah, there's details of how that works in game terms. Yeah, a bit disturbing, but, Delta Green has to do some gross stuff. And we got some great advice for players, which includes specifically stuff for Fall of Delta Green, and GUMSHOE best practices in general, which can be very useful to have. And the Innsmouth rules repeated again from Night's Black Agents. Now we get into Handler's Eyes only. So here we're getting sort of inside Delta Green, the executive committee, how it was set up, the most important people in the beginning of the organization, the role of Delta Green analysts, case officers, and then Majestic, who are kind of an internal threat. They're part of the U.S. government that wants to weaponize paranormal and unnatural artifacts, believing they can be used to benefit the United States, but of course it's a very foolish idea, extremely dangerous. And there's a few examples of projects that they've done. They don't fully understand what they're dealing with. They think it's, alien technology or futuristic sci-fi stuff rather than the unnatural, which is what Delta Green's specialty is. So there's a number of different projects detailed here, which I won't spoil for you, especially if you're going to be players and not GMs. Loads of great background info, basically. Project Looking Glass, so this was about UFO research, Project Delphi, all this kind of stuff. Some of these you may have heard of. And Majestic in your campaign, they can be kind of the spoiled rich antagonists. They're kind of the black mirror of Delta Green. Like, what could happen if Delta Green gets totally the wrong idea? But they also have nicer offices, bigger budgets, and better equipment. You can't just kill your way past these people because they're part of the government. They're part of the United States government as well. And they might have resources that you need. So very challenging foe to deal with. Now, there are some, as well, nice details here about M Section, which is the Canadian kind of version of Delta Green, and Pisces, which is the UK part of Delta Green, and a full source book on Pisces is coming out for Delta Green, the role-playing game, which I've already got on pre-order, and I just can't wait for that. It's going to be great. So then we have some background on previous Delta Green operations. We've got timelines here, some great background material and atmosphere again. Operation Hound Dog. There's some historical key points as well. So the Kennedy assassination, stuff like that. So there's a mixture of real history and Delta Green history, which is really interesting. And how they meld the two together, I think it's a challenging thing to do, and they've done it in a way that is not offensive or kind of minimizing the role of just human nastiness in a lot of these things. And it's also clearly divided up in, you have this blue tinted chunk. This is real stuff that happened. This text with the Delta symbols next to it is the Delta Green history. They're intermingled, but one doesn't replace the other. We're not minimizing the horrors of humanity against itself, which is ideal. Yeah, so we got some more history, and then strange days. So these are highlights from the weirder side of the 1960s, again going year by year up to the 70s. And now we get into dealing with the unnatural itself. So here we have reading through unnatural tomes. Basically, most of the time, Delta Green wants you to burn them. Poring over a tome can increase your rating in the unnatural ability or provide hypergeometry potential points, or both. What you'll need to do to skim through this volume will depend on the work. You'll need the appropriate language. If it's code, you'll need cryptography. If it's a madman's ranting manifesto, you might need psychotherapy. You might need a cult. If it's a magic book or a grimoire, all kinds of stuff could come into play. And then they've got examples of classics like the Necronomicon, which gives you unnatural of 3, hypergeometry potential of 4, and dedicated pool points of 1 to 4 for any specific investigation based on the handler's judgment. There's some other tomes like the Book of Dagon, so you get unnatural of 1 if you don't have any already, and hypergeometry potential of 2. Cult de Ghoul de Vermis Mysteries, unnatural of 2, hypergeometry of 3, less for translations. So each of these has an interesting side effect on the reader, of course. Then we get into hypergeometry, so this is the game's equivalent of magic. Basically, instead of having magic as in Trail of Cthulhu, we have hypergeometry. It's a general ability, but you can also use it as an investigative ability to determine if a given spell or item might do, or what deities or cosmic forces it invokes, or what grimoire tradition it comes from. But you can't use character build points to buy hypergeometry rating at character creation. You have to either read a unnatural book and gain hypergeometry potential, commune with vast entities beyond space and time, or visit cosmically touched places. Hypergeometric potential points quantify such experiences, and they talk about each of those possibilities here. So it's not something you can buy, it's something you have to experience and live. There's some nice stuff here about psychic abilities as well. So this is an optional thing that you can do. Say researchers were researching psychic powers within the MK Ultra program. Project Dancer and various majestic sub-projects also investigate psionic phenomena. So build points for general psychic abilities come from the pool of general build points. First rating point in any paranormal ability costs 5 build points. After that, build points for that ability become rating points as normal. So if you want to buy telekinesis under these rules, you have to spend 5 points for the first point, and then if you want to get a rating of 3, you'd spend 2 more for a total of 7. Psychic powers are the first fumblings of hypergeometric perception. As such, they are always dangerous and potentially horrible. Difficulty should be high, and particularly dramatic ability use should come with physical deterioration. -1 health per paranormal ability point spend. The handler can and should visit psychic agents with visions, uncontrollable outbreaks, nosebleeds, or anything else, especially in the presence of powerfully psionic beings like Deep Ones, Kenyani, and Migo. So, and then they give some rules here about GM character psionics, the use of telekinetics, alien psionics. So if not detailed in their write-up, you can assume that alien abilities use either hypergeometry or the GMC rules for psionics above, and the handler can choose which one applies. Using hypergeometry, basically, is performing a ritual. So you need to have some kind of informational representations of a solved equation, a scroll, or an enchanted item. You might need to trigger it using a code phrase or something like that. Each ritual will have 4 components: the name, its element, its effects, and the cost. And ritual complexities as well will affect how long it takes to learn and the activation time. So a simple ritual could be learned in 5 hours, and the activation time is measured in rounds, whereas an elaborate ritual could take 100 plus hours to learn, and it would take hours to complete. But of course, it would be correspondingly more powerful. So using a ritual, you must know the ritual or the activating rote for the object, fulfill any necessary elements, and carry out any required actions, such as chanting, gestures, etc. Pay the cost of the ritual, make an activation test of hypergeometry or stability against a difficulty equal to the current sanity pool. If the test fails, you pay only half the cost. Many objects prepay some portion of the cost or reduce difficulty activation test, or both. Ritual cost, so for hypergeometry, 1 pull point of hypergeometry will equal 1 cost point. For health or stability, 2 points will equal 1 cost point. So you can double spend health or stability points to fulfill the cost of a ritual. You can, of course, be addicted to this feeling of power that you get from being able to wield the hypergeometric power of the unnatural. And then we have some parameters for defining rituals, the types of damage that they can do. So no rituals increase sanity. Very, very few rituals actually increase stability. Some very terrible rituals cause lethality effects for the noted cost. They can move things. They could do a permanent or ongoing effect. So they could provide information at a distance, summon a creature. And then there are, of course, some sample rituals. So there's call forth those from the outside, which is elaborate, and the cost can vary, depend on the entity summoned. So you might change the name of the ritual and the cost as well to reflect the power of the entity summoned. So like Dimensional Shamblers, Migo, or Yogg-Sothoth himself, for example. The Cult of Dagon is a simple ritual. So you need a 5-hour creation of a clay tablet, which is then thrown in the sea in an area known to be populated by deep ones. It calls deep ones to the surface for communion. Then you need to take a stability test for seeing deep ones. So modern deep ones are less trusting in their predecessors, as well as less forgiving. It should be noted that this is not a summons or a command, but a call, a request. It does not in any way compel them to respond or control deep ones who answer, although the text may be misread to imply that. Charnel meditation. So basically you can call some ghouls in graveyard. You can break a connection with the unnatural using the closing of the breach. You create a stone gate to allow you to travel across great distances. You can carve the Elder Sign, which is a mystical sigil drawn in the air or inscribed upon a surface, and that can basically bar certain unnatural entities from damaging that specific area or person. You can exchange personalities, so you transfer the mind and life glow of the operator to another's brain. The operator must gaze hypnotically at the target. Targets of the ritual absolutely get a sense trouble roll, which manifests as a jolt of detached perspective, and then you engage in a contest of hypergeometry versus stability. And then you have this exchange personalities invasion. So the first invasion will be very short, 1 round, cost you 2. Basically, the more often you invade somebody using this ability, the easier it becomes to gain control and to erode their stability, for example. We've got, so meditation upon the favored ones, which bring upon Migo after a few hours of chanting. Infallible suggestions, so you overcome the target in a contest of hypergeometry versus stability, and for 1 round, the target will do whatever you say. But if you command them to commit murder or suicide or something else terrible, you will have to do a stability test, as will the victim. Then you have one who passes the gateways, pentagrams of power, the powder of Ibn Ghazi, which you'll remember from Call of Cthulhu, raised from essential salts, so that's bringing somebody back to life. A revived subject can be reduced back to essential salts by reciting the restoration incantation in reverse. That takes a few minutes and has a cost of 4. The subject is helpless to resist unless the operator can be physically stopped. The Voorish Sign, so you can briefly see things that are invisible, indications of ongoing hypergeometric effects and so on. The Withering, that's a classic where you shrivel somebody's body parts or other things. And then we have a history of the hidden world, which I will skim past because, spoilers. It's more fun to discover this stuff in play, I think. We go all the way back to the very ancient periods alluded to in the Cthulhu mythos, other dimensions like Carcosa, the Dreamlands, hyperspaces, so these are non-Euclidean dimensions of elsewhere, and there are many of these. Inner space, so this is the space within the mind, often explored by people through different projects like MK Ultra or experience with psychedelic drugs. Other planets like Yugoth, also known as Pluto to us. There are signs of alien races in ruins on Mars, they're on the dark side of the moon, all kinds of cool stuff. And sometimes the Migo have dealings with humans as well, so watch out for that. Delta Green agents may find themselves climbing the plateau of Lang in the Dreamlands or be drawn into Carcosa, but it's a little bit difficult for them to go into space unless Majestic has an entire covert space program it has failed to mention. But you could end up, traveling through gates or moving through other dimensions or all kinds of creative stuff. So you don't necessarily need to feel limited by the technology of the time because you are dealing with hypergeometry and the unnatural. Then we have how to create and customize places to capture the right mood for Lovecraftian horror. And then we have examples of alien horrors and intelligences. So alien hypergeometry. So this will be the magical or psionic attacks that are available to certain unnatural creatures. How to handle their ability pool loss, health loss, how monstrous grappling works, and special defenses that some of them have, such as being out of phase with our reality. Only attacks that roll an odd number will hit them. Attacks that roll an even result simply pass through it. They could have reduced lethality. Some natural but enormous creatures also gain reduced lethality thanks to sheer bulk. So the handler will subtract a given number from the lethality of the given attack. So some unnatural entities are so tough that your full auto blast from your AK-47 won't be enough to kill it, or even close, really. They can be resilient, made of non-terrestrial matter. They could be completely intangible, which means they're not hit by anything physical, but they are vulnerable to hypergeometric formulae and rituals, and they will inflict some kind of stability loss, and there'll be an investigation section for each creature description. So again, I'll just go briefly through the kind of things that are mentioned here. Avatars of the Headless One, black winged ones. So these are semi-insectile, semi-humanoid entities. We have the Ayapa, so black winged creature, and it comes from the Peruvian mochica, meaning a decapitator. Their speed has been reported as anywhere from 5 to 600 miles per hour. They may fly partially through hyperspace. We have the color out of space, which is beautifully illustrated down here in its full-on creepiness. They drain health and fighting from living ecosystems. They have an iridescent attack that can cause malaise. And there's some great stuff you can do to try and investigate their effect on the outside world. We have the classic deep ones, of course, in their lesser form, deep one hybrids with humans. And some key tips on keeping deep ones scary. They're one of the most common Lovecraftian creatures, so making them scary is not always easy. But using greater deep ones might put a little bit of the fear of God in some people. And progenitor deep ones are even worse. You can see they have huge athletics, fighting, and health abilities, 30 plus in hypergeometry. All spells connected with Cthulhu or their own race have a cost of 1, so they can throw spells at you like nobody's business. Dimensional Shamblers, they kind of resemble a hulking insectoid ape, and they can grab you and move you through all different geometries beyond our reality. So not great. And you might end up somewhere where you can't breathe, or where things are really crazy, or you get imprisoned in another reality. Feaster from the Stars. It's a loathsome hovering thing that's normally invisible, but yeah, it's visible when it feeds. So it's like the star vampire of Cthulhu, basically. We have ghouls, of course. We've got the Nofke, the hairy myth thing of the Greenland ice. It's otherwise known. They're very tough, and they have 15 for hypergeometry if they're a Nofke shaman, and they can summon the Wendigo, possibly Itlashua itself. We have the great race of Yith, who of course are great at mind transference, even across time. They have some really cool stuff like sensing the future, hypnosis, which is really strong for them, temporal immortality, total knowledge. They never sleep. They perform perfect calculations, and they have Yithian technology, which is really powerful, like the electric gun, memory erasers, temporal mines, time projectors, and so on. We've got the Haidi Negritii, the young goats of darkness. So these are the children of Shub-Niggurath, I assume. Trampling hooves, tentacles, horrible sucking mouths. Yeah, that sounds about right. Fighting 26, health 18, hypergeometry 8+. They're pregnant with magical force, and they can call Shub-Niggurath on nights of the new moon at cost 13. They eagerly sacrifice humans to pay that cost. I've got the Hounds of Tindalos, famous for appearing from any sort of angles, sharp angles and edges. They're weird geometric entities. They have strong fighting abilities as well at 23, and hypergeometry, which always include contact hounds of the angles with a cost of 1, but they are not so good if the room is curved, so keep that in mind. And they have inconsistent form, so they can effectively attack anyone within 10 yards by directing its form to a location. They can alter its size and fold and stretch and extend in all different ways. The Hunting Horror is the classic flying faceless bat thing from the mythos. All rituals related to Nyarlathotep have cost 3 for them. We've got Fighting 30, health 23, so no joke. Ifrits, so these are balls or columns of fire that grow from pinpoint sparks to man-sized or larger infernos. They can potentially combine into enormous firestorms. They appear to be sentient, even intelligent plasmas. These are known as, in theosophical lore, as children of the fire mist. So that's kind of a new one. But the Kunyani, we know those from some of the Call of Cthulhu literature. But the Kithamila, oozing formless entities resemble a thick freshet of black petroleum or slime. Yeah, sounds pretty disgusting. Fighting 23. Oh, so these are spawn of Setholgwa. That's why. Ye liveliest awfulness. We've got the Migo, the classic fungoid extraterrestrials, and they are not so great. I mean, they're relatively small, so they're not so tough to fight, but they can create hyperspace gates. They have pretty decent hypergeometry, 8+ for sorcerer and priest casts. They can't be photographed. They can fly in any environment, including deep space, and they can blink across up to 100 yards of space with a difficulty 4 athletics test. They basically phase through reality, and they have cool equipment. They can create a web of cold. They have an electric wand. They can erase short-term memories for 12 hours. They have a deadly gravity weapon used only as a last resort, and a macro-dimensional scalpel, which is a 5th-dimensional scalpel, suture, forceps, implant, multi-tool, it says. It slices through or unfolds any organic tissue, L1 asterisk if used as a weapon. Its operations look and feel like torture, not least because Migo don't use anesthesia. Seeing it used on humans always costs 1 stability, even if the witness succeeds at the stability tests. There you go. We got the Greys. So these are Migo constructs that they've used to kind of look less bizarre to humans, and that's why Majestic thinks that Greys are their own thing, but they're actually kind of reskinned Migo, basically. The Metekagmi is the abominable snowman of the Himalayas, but they are actually a real thing. We have the Murup. So, an enormous demon or ghost who lives underground and sends storms to kill his enemies. Health 44, wind 10 plus. Some of them worship Tsathoggua or Niogtha, and they have hypergeometry rating between 8 and 12 with the appropriate rituals. We've got small guys like the rat things as well. Serpent folk, so these are more human-sized threats, so more defeatable, but they can do some special stuff as well, like draining blood. They can eat a corpse and take on the appearance of the devoured human for 2 hypergeometry pool points, which is pretty unnerving, as you can imagine. They can also use a single gesture to send a target flung backwards with extreme force, inflicting D+1 damage. It's unknown if this ability is a ritual or an inherent ability of the serpent folk. You also have degenerate serpent folk, so they have interbred with Neanderthals and isolated humans, so they're kind of like Deep One hybrids, so they're not quite as strong as a full-on purebred serpent folk, but they can still do some nasty stuff. We got the famous Shoggoth, formless blob of goo, health 38 plus, athletics 28 plus, fighting 23 plus, but it doesn't have much in the way of hypergeometry unless it absorbed the rights of its masters. Its pseudopod strike does D plus 2 damage, and a smash attack with it has lethality 2. Lethality attacks above L2 do D plus 2 damage. Shoggoths also never hurt or suffer any damage penalties. They got loads of special abilities as well, including mimicry, regeneration, they're unstoppable. Yeah, real bad. Spawn of Yogg-Sothoth. So when Yogg-Sothoth mates with a creature, they create a hybrid. They have a humanoid type appearance and gain hypergeometry 1 for each year since its birth. Calling those from outside, Yogg-Sothoth and Vorusine and as many more rituals as it can learn are available to it. The red sucking mouths of its usually concealed tentacles can suck blood from the victim's veins. So basically, it automatically hits, doing D+1 athletics damage. Each point of lost athletics deals 1 health for the spawn. Then we got Star Spawn of Cthulhu, health 51, fighting 27. These are terrible guys, as in Call of Cthulhu. Hypergeometry ranges from 15 plus for normal Star Spawn to 300 plus for the 5 Watchers. They can call Dagon, call forth Star Spawn, and contact Dread Cthulhu in dreams. Their attacks, like Claw Swipe, have an L1 asterisk, grab and consume, L2 asterisk H. Really, really deadly stuff. They're resilient. Weapons, lethality 4 and above, have full effect. So that's things like bombs dropped from aircraft. Anything else, you got no real hope unless you got super heavy weapons. They can do ballistic flight, they can grab and consume, which is just detailing what happens up here. Psychic shout, can unsettle people right from their first appearance. We've got the Chocho people, who are sadistic. They worship Ubosathla, I think, in the Cthulhu mythos. But yeah, they appear in Delta Green as well. Shamans in the Chocho can have 5 plus hypergeometry, 10 plus for sorcerers. Rituals always include a means of contact for the relevant deity and call forth those from outside for his servitors, as well as Vorusine, Withering, and anything else unpleasant. They also can use hollow point ammo, in this case a tiny hollow needle, and basically they can fill their bullets with poison. They also have paralytic poison for any attack that breaks the skin of the opponent and has all the effects of that. Can be lethal too if you get a severe result. Those beyond, so these are creatures that sort of vibrate on strange frequencies out of phase with our world. Then Crawford Tillinghast invented the resonator in 1920, and it awakens ancient atrophied sense organs within the human brain which see this other world. It also brings the quantum structures of both worlds into alignment until physical interaction becomes possible. Then you get bad stuff like the Ultraviolet Devourer. You can also get the Wendigo Wak, Cannibal Ogres of Algonquin. Doesn't sound too great. The White Apes, Cunning of Savages and the Ferocity of Baboons. Unarmed Combat 16, Hypergeometry 0. They can do a Gorilla Hug, which will do a lot of damage. The Worm That Walks, he's a bit of a wizard, this guy, and also thoroughly disgusting. 4 to 10 plus Hypergeometry, and usually at least one version of Call Forth Those from Outside for a Flock of Ayapa, a Dimensional Shambler, or a Feaster from the Stars. They also use attack rituals such as Withering, Infallible Suggestion, or Exchange Personalities. Then we have the Xin or Shen. These are Chinese names for the various earth, weather, and celestial spirits. And there are cults for those to this day. That's pretty cool as well. So we got some new mythos entities kind of that derive from another culture, which is cool. They can do weird stuff like create cancerous growths, depression, drain your energy to create exhaustion. They can manipulate electromagnetic energy to fry modern technology, psychic surgery. They can do tearing frenzies. And they've got telekinesis and temporal doldrums, meaning that it can alter the passage of time for a perceptually linked group of up to 6 humans. That could be pretty crazy. Then we've got zombies. You always got to have zombies, of course. You can have a ravenous mob, post-mortem infection, and a bite that could inflict zombification on yourself. And then you can, some advice on creating variant creatures, customizing creatures, and new creatures from scratch. So creature design parameters help you with that. You get the type of entity. You can start with one of these suggestions, the kind of template. You can change it according to size, alter the stability loss, and there's tips here on how to balance these various factors. But the game isn't really about about balance. It's about finding the source of the unnatural and trying to get rid of it, and that can happen in a number of different ways. So there's also a discussion of the different abilities that are available for creatures and how you can work them in and what the relative power of those can be. So Dream Chase, that's pretty tough. It can chase you into the dreamlands and follow you while you're asleep. Cost 3 for black winged ones, ghouls, hunting horrors, and other things of nightmare. So, you can do lots of cool stuff with normal mythos entities and add special powers to them, or use them to create a new variant entirely. And then finally we get into the star gods themselves. So you have Cthulhu here, we have Gitana-Thoa, we have Gilishta, Noth Yidik, the dogs that howl in the maelstrom of Azathoth. So they're associated with the hounds of Tindalos. Kutugqua comes from the southern Paiute, meaning night or darkness from fire. So they are worshipping the Jinn or Ifrits. We have Ran Tagoth as well. And then we have the gods of the earth, Sathagwa and the earthly ones, Aabhi, Kramkuach, Itla Shua. So this is the so-called sky owner, or is known as the Wendigo in North America. We've got Mormo. We've got Nug and Yeb, the twin blasphemy. Nyogtha, Slenaka, the great spider, known as Atlekanaka in Call of Cthulhu. We've got Yeg, the serpent god. And we've got gods of dreams. So the headless one, just here. In case you were wondering. The great ones of Sarnath, so the doomed city of Manar, they still appear in the Dreamlands. We've got the Greek god of sleep as well, Hypnos, Nodens, of course. And there's alien dream gods like Bokrug and the Nameless Mist. And of course you can customize your great old ones for yourself. Then you've got the cosmic gods. These are the worst ones. So Azathoth, dwelling at the center of the universe. The bad news is that even the briefest communion with Azathoth on its plane of existence is a rough equivalent of 15 megaton atomic burst, as the monstrous nuclear chaos beyond angled space energetically disrupts space-time around it. So yeah, don't do that. Nyarlathotep, he's got many forms. He's the mighty messenger, the soul and herald of Azathoth, translating the demon sultan's thrashings into vile action. It commands the Migo, who consider themselves among Nyarlathotep's million favored ones, and unleashes its hunting horrors against those who oppose its whims. Got Shub-Niggurath, the spawn of Azathoth in the darkness. Beings across the cosmos venerate Shub-Niggurath in words that translate to human ears as a black goat of the woods with 1,000 young. We've got Yog-Sothoth, the all-in-one, the key to the gate where the spheres meet, also known as the Watcher on the Threshold and the Opener of the Way. So has power existing in all times and places, apparently. Then we have some details on the Hastur mythos. This is the King in Yellow. So we see that in the, for example, the Impossible Landscapes campaign for Delta Green. So there's a little bit of detail about that. Then the effects of encountering these entities. So if you see Azathoth, it manifests with lethality 1, 10-yard radius, double radius, and +1 lethality each round. So it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, kills more and more and more and more, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Cthulhu, he can claw swat, lethality 3-star, up to 3 clustered targets at once. Those who fail stability tests receive nightmares, because Cthulhu works in dreams. You can't really get rid of them, and they will kill you, so you gotta escape. For example, the Sphere Touch of Yog-Sothoth, I mean, consider if you've survived +6 stability, +4 sanity, plus the aura of power, and then you get touched by a sphere where you get deer +0 health rating points and a lethality 4 blast, +4 sanity to dismiss it. Yeah, I mean, it's a problem. So if you're able to use the closing of the breach ritual, you can spend sanity to do so, but it can be spent by any witness who knows the ritual, or in some cases by any witness who also sacrifices double that amount of health in blood. But at least one witness must know the proper ritual. So you can't just immediately dismiss Cthulhu, especially if the stars are right. Any attack doing L4 or higher damage to it, so just being struck by a 300-ton or larger object at full speed, discorporates it. Other entities may be similarly vulnerable in specific ways at the handler's discretion. There you go. Then we have targets of opportunity. So these are about the cults, again, which I won't spoil for you. We have GRU, SV8. So this is the Soviet intelligence and their effect on the scene. We have, Club Apocalypse, Huan Yin and their sorcerers. We've got, the Motion and the Great Race of Yith, the Cult of Transcendence, Sea of Fear, Americans Against Covert Communism. Yeah, lots of interesting idea seeds here for campaigns based on these cults. Plenty of cool stuff there. And a few smaller cults as well, if you want to start off with the Maryland Sculptsy, the True Love Study Group, stuff like that. Then finally we have the Handler's Handbook. So this is going to give you a lot of the key feelings of the Delta Green experience. So you want to feel uncertainty. You don't want to give people difficulty numbers. You want to give detailed descriptions. You want to give them nightmarish descriptions. You want to give them a sense of risk, a lack of control of the situation as things get worse and worse. The elements of horror are first notified. Then we have the more earthly elements. So humanity is also a threat. Agents never feel certain about what they're doing. Hallucinations are cloaked in uncertainty, are cloaked in mistrust and all sorts of disguises and depressions. Fatality is normal. So death is not only part of the Delta Green universe, it is its foundation. Your agents show up for operations knowing the price in death and mental trauma. Surviving just means fighting another day. Any operation that doesn't leave any agents dead, crippled, or insane counts as a red letter day. But there are worse things than death as well. That's an interesting and terrifying idea. So even with M16s, Delta Green agents seem underpowered compared to the badass vampire hunters of Night's Black agents. In that game's terms, the fall of Delta Green starts with burn and dust baked right in. By contrast, Fear itself characters, psychic powers aside, feel physically weaker but psychologically more complex. Much of this comes down to the difference between player characters who came of age before the 70s and those who came of age afterwards. There's a nice little box here about how the Fall of Delta Green fits into the GUMSHOE canon, if you like. And they give some hot tips on furnishing the madhouse, as they call it, which is building a game and constructing a crime around it, constructing cults, inciting events that drive people into Delta Green. Don't over-explain things. That's key in any horror game. Creating an operation, working out what the horrible truth is, figuring out what the core clues should be and how they should be found. A standard operational skeleton, which has a hook, so there's an event that puts people in. The initial suspicions of the involvement of the unnatural. A jolt of horror. One line of inquiry goes dead, then you get a reveal, a blowback, a twist, a moment of relief, and the final reveal of the true evil, the setup to get ready for the confrontation, and then the confrontation itself. Then the additional step for Delta Green of the cover-up. Of course, you can mix these events up in different ways and have floating events, much in a similar way recommended in Night's Black Agents. And then there's some nice tips here about creating a campaign, so that takes commitment, of course. You want to make sure your groups want to continue with the game, brief with the players, ask them what kind of threats they're interested in, and try and, stretch out the situations and set up operations so that one follows the next and sets up the larger threat at the end of the road. So some hot tips on avoiding the feeling of railroading your players as well, playing to the strengths of the medium in a tabletop role-playing game to gain more horror, building operations on the fly, which some people are great at. I couldn't imagine doing that. And then we have an introductory adventure, which I will skip merrily past, but you will see there is some cool imagery there. And then we get into the back matters. So this is how you can convert existing Delta Green characters into the Fall of Delta Green, which is fantastic. It covers all the abilities, hypergeometry, creatures, damage, tomes, rituals, all that good stuff is covered. Then we have sources for Delta Green, for the original Lovecraft sources about the 60s and spy stories, the shadows, conspiracy theories. And we've got a whole bunch of yellow sign acid tabs. It's a great touch. And here's the beautiful Fall of Delta Green character sheet. You can see it's marked as our Delta Green sheets with the look like sort of government document. There's a place to put your mugshot there if you like, a passport size photo, your service record and inciting event if you have one. Hypergeometry if you've developed a potential, and your rating if you've learned some rituals. Then you got your general abilities, all your investigative stuff, your stability, sanity, and health. And that's really all you need. Then you have a handler's agent tracking sheet to make sure that, each player and each agent, what skills they have, so you can give each agent the opportunity to shine in different scenes in your adventure. Then a list of hit threshold modifiers during combat, how lethality works, explosives, darkness modifiers, and lethality for explosives, the called shots and other combat options like disarm, evasion, sniping, ability refreshes. So a beautiful summary of the rules. Then a huge list of Kickstarter backers and your index. So that, my friends, is the Fall of Delta Green. A fantastic adaptation of Delta Green to the GUMSHOE system. I highly recommend it. I do hope it comes back into print very soon, and that the Borellus Connection campaign comes out soon. I know that the main content is basically done, as far as I know, but there will need to be layout and other steps that follow as well. So have to be a bit patient, but I've got my pre-order in, and I'm very excited. I'm very excited to try running this game. And next week we're going to look at my favorite horror games, and you may see a bit of Delta Green in there, who knows. So until then, I hope you enjoyed this. Stay sane, stay stable if you can, to maintain that position in consensus reality. Leave a like and a subscribe on your way out if you feel like it. And otherwise, hope to see you in the comments and in my next video. So take care, stay well, be sane, and see you soon. All right, bye-bye.